Hello, in just a moment we've got the press preview for you as we take a look at the morning newspapers. First though, a reminder of our top stories here this evening. And Theresa May says President Trump has told her that he's 100% behind NATO. She was speaking beside him at a joint press conference at the White House. Iraqi forces say Islamic State were planning to launch missiles tipped with chemical warheads from western Mosul. And the UKIP leader, Paul Nuttall, says he believes that water torture is a price worth paying if it helps save lives. Hello there, you're watching Sky News and the press preview. Over the next half hour, we're going to be seeing what's making the headlines with the journalist and author Rachel Shabby and David Cameron's former chief of staff, the PR consultant Alex Dean. So good evening to both of you.
Good evening.
Hello. So let's take a look then at what's on the front pages. And many of them have focused, perhaps not surprisingly, on Theresa May and Donald Trump's so-called special relationship. I want to hold your hand. The Mirror fronts with a picture of Theresa May and what it describes as a touchy-feely Donald Trump holding her hand. The FT also features that same image, focusing on the two reaffirming their commitment to NATO. The warmth between the pair also makes the front of the Daily Mail. It called their meeting a remarkable encounter on one of the most extraordinary days in the long history of UK-US relations. The special relationship is back on. Trump will visit Britain soon after being formally invited by the Queen. That's on the front of the Eye. And Brexit is a blessing for Britain. The Times leads with Donald Trump's endorsement of the UK's departure from the EU, along with the symbolic picture of the two posing for photographs at the bust of Sir Winston Churchill. Hand in hand, united we stand. Trump's promises of a golden era of friendship between the US and the UK features on the front of the Express. And the couple's, what looks like a romantic walk at the White House, given they're holding hands, is the lead on the Telegraph. It quotes Theresa May's joke yesterday: when it comes to the special relationship, sometimes opposites attract. The new special relationship, The Guardian homes in on Donald Trump's vow not to bring back torture. And finally, The Star. Not much sign. You can actually see Theresa May and Donald Trump there, but they lead on another revelation from the Big Brother house. So let's talk about those front pages then with Rachel Shabby and Alex Dean. And I mean, there's one main story in town, isn't there? And this is Theresa May's visit to Washington and her talks today with Donald Trump and subsequent press conference. I think you picked out the Telegraph to start off with, so let me just find that for you. But very similar front pages, all of them, as we just saw there. Hand in hand, the happy couple is their headline there.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's not going to be a comfortable image to look at. The man who, the US president who openly bragged about groping women, now holding hands with the British Prime Minister, and the fact that it's splashed on every front page with all these slightly queasy headlines is not. I wonder whether she's going to be that happy with the optics of that.
Let me just get Alex's take on that. Do you agree? Because it is that image of them holding hands. It looked, as we just saw from the moving pictures there, like he might have been helping her down a slope outside the White House.
I gather in that colonnade there's a slight slope, and so he was offering his help as she, in her high heels, was going down the slope, which I would think is the right thing to do.
But how do you think she'll feel about that image?
I don't think she'll particularly care for the picture, because she's seeking, of course, as I believe her to be seen as statesmanlike and standing up for Britain, but doing the right thing in ensuring that our special relationship and our alliance continues in a closeness that may not have been felt under, in fact, was not really felt in the same way under Barack Obama. So it won't be the image that she cares for. But the way that you put that, I thought, was interesting. And I don't want to be unfair to you, but Steve Bell's cartoon today in The Guardian
was horrible.
Well, OK, then we agree. I mean, so yeah. Bell, it looked like Trump sexually dominating Theresa May. And I don't think if it was... If our Prime Minister was a man, I don't think anyone would ever have gone in for the same sort of innuendo in that way.
I don't think I've got that, actually, to show people.
Doesn't matter.
But what about Theresa May? Clearly, she wants to have a relationship that works for Britain. But at the same time, is it uncomfortable for her, given that Donald Trump has some controversial views on things. Is it difficult to be seen to be this close?
She won't have wanted a picture of them of holding hands or him holding her hand or whichever it is. She won't have wanted that picture. But every British Prime Minister wants to be close to the American president that's in office when they serve, or presidents that are in office when they serve. And it does us no harm at all. In fact, I think it's a good thing for us to be the first head of foreign government to be into the White House after his inauguration, to meet with President Trump. I think it's a great thing that he lavishes praise on Britain and on our future path. And I think that the fact they were both falling over each other, to use the phrase special relationship...
Well, yes, and that makes the front of several of the papers,
yeah. I mean, but that is not a phrase that really found favour in the Obama administration. So I think all of that is good. And Anna, the point I would make is this, that there are many people in our country who think we shouldn't have left the European Union, or shouldn't have voted to leave the European Union. And that's a completely respectable point of view. But as we are now going to, it's better to have an incumbent in the White House who favours that path rather than one who doesn't. Would
you agree, given that you may not agree with some of what Donald Trump says, but would you agree that pragmatically it could be helpful for Britain to have a good relationship, to have a special relationship, and to potentially put Britain in a good position for a trade deal post-Brexit?
I mean, what you're saying is a very reasonable framing. You're suggesting that there is some kind of ideological dispute with the president, and it's beyond that. That would be a normal set of circumstances in which everything that Alex says about wanting to have good relations with the US would be correct. We are not in normal circumstances. We are dealing with someone who's a far-right authoritarian who wants to build a wall with Mexico, who has just imposed a partial Muslim ban, who wants to monitor crimes committed by migrants, who is attacking the free press and is undermining the validity of his own democratic voting system. This is not normal. It's not a normal set of circumstances in which your very normal conversation applies. And in terms of having a relationship with the US, absolutely, we are leaving the EU. We need to respect that. But we are dealing with a situation where the UK has to look at what the benefit is of allying to a US under President Trump, in particular when he's constantly spoken quite openly about wanting to undermine Europe, wanting to undermine the kind of mechanisms and institutions and constructs that have maintained a peace and a stability for quite some time.
Well, I disagree with a lot of that until you got to the last bit. And when he was saying very negative things about NATO, I would agree with you that his speech there was unhelpful. Actually, I think much of his remarks about the EU are things that plenty of Eurosceptics, and I know you're not one, but Eurosceptics would find things to align with. He wasn't being anti-Europe, he was being anti-EU, and that's a distinction that I think sometimes deliberately gets lost. Well, I'm not saying that's what you were doing. The difference here is that and again it's to our Prime Minister's credit, there is tangible progress that's been made on the very issue that you're concerned about security there. Because before Theresa May went to the White House, Trump's last extant position on it was NATO is obsolete, his words. Now, flushed out by that press conference, and it may have come round later, but it came out today because our Prime Minister was there and doing it, a commitment to her passing his words and him agreeing, 100% commitment to NATO. That's got to be good. And that's our Prime Minister moving that issue forwards. And beyond that international stage, she's moving forwards the important bilateral relationship that underpins both our position on North Atlantic trade, but furthermore, the most important security alliance that we have in the world. She is our Prime Minister. She didn't want us to leave the European Union, but that's the hand that she's been dealt. She's doing her best, and we should support her.
Do you feel at all heartened by the fact that Theresa May did make that statement about Donald Trump agreeing that they should be 100% committed to NATO? Also, there was the issue on torture that he said, although he thought it would work, he was happy to defer to the generals who wouldn't go ahead with reintroducing waterboarding. That was what we heard in the news conference.
I'm not heartened. And again, that's not because I think it's anything to do with her. If she gets him to say that about NATO today, that's good. That's a good thing. I don't believe him. Okay. We're not dealing with normal situation. We're dealing with a man who has demonstrably lied, changed his mind, and there's no reason to trust what he says about NATO today. It might change tomorrow. It depends who he talks to.
I understand that you profoundly disagree with lots that Donald Trump says and stands for, but it is the reality that we have. He is now the president.
He has changed his mind, though, hasn't he, on flip-flopped on several issues?
Many people do, including every British politician that I know.
Yeah, but this isn't...
But I'm asking you what you would... even if it's the extreme case you'll portray it as being, what would you have us do, given that he is president?
Well, what I would have us do is think about our place in the world and what things like security and stability and trade are dependent on. And even though we're leaving the EU, that doesn't mean we have to leave Europe in terms of sensibilities, in terms of security, in terms of the kind of ties and the kind of commitments to the kind of arrangements that have so far served us well. Now is not the time to be making sycophantic moves like this to
I don't think our Prime Minister, that's just different opinion.
It's fawning.
I don't think our Prime Minister
It looks fawning. The world will see it as fawning, as the UK being desperate for a deal with the US because we're leaving Europe. That's how it's going to play. And in terms of Britain's standing, I don't think that's a good look.
Maybe you see that because you want to see it.
I'm not the only one who sees it like that.
Maybe those who see it like that see it like that.
But those people are in the world, and that is how it will be seen.
Yes, but like it or not, President Donald Trump is in the world, and so is Prime Minister May. And I saw two politicians working equally hard to be nice to each other. I don't think there was sycophancy there at all.
To pick up on Rachel's point, could it be provocative? Might the other European nations with whom we have to carry through some delicate negotiations to exit the EU, could they be irritated by...
This is just the beginning. If we're going to thrive in an international environment where we, by dint of seeking to distinguish ourselves from our competitors, need to be lower tax, more free market and more pro-free trade, the deal with the US is only one potential thing we need to explore. India, China, big deals are going to have to be on the table in a meaningful way before our 2 years of negotiation over Article 50 is up. So if they were going to get upset, they were going to get upset anyway.
OK, and just to remind people that, again, that photograph appears, you haven't seen the Mirror, there's the Mirror. They have the same hand-holding picture, as does the Express. The Times actually goes for a different image, doesn't it? It focuses on the bust of Winston Churchill back in the Oval Office.
It's good to see
that. The two of them posing beside it. We've done a lot of May and Trump. We'll give you a break, have a bit of a breather. We'll talk about lots of other issues, though, after the break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about the moment the Queen came face-to-face with bare-chested Fijian warriors in Norwich. That's coming up. Welcome back to the Press Preview, where we're taking a look at the morning papers with journalist and author Rachel Shabby and David Cameron's former Chief of Staff, the PR consultant Alex Dean. So we're going to start off this section delving inside the papers, and you've picked out a story inside tomorrow's Daily Mail about the Labour Party and the Brexit vote.
Yeah, I mean, this is Corbyn putting a three-line whip on the vote in favour of triggering Article 50, and it's causing resignations from his shadow cabinet. This is a horrible situation for Labour. There's no easy decision here. It's going to be horrible either way. But there is, it's clear that Labour can't be seen to be thwarting a democratic vote, the referendum decision to leave the EU. What it can, and I think should be doing, and maybe needs to be doing more clearly and more firmly, in a way that may not have led to this, I don't know, but actually being harder on what kind of Brexit we're going to have, and scrutinising and holding to account.
They have tabled amendments, haven't they? They've tabled
amendments, but I guess the clarity over their red lines is maybe not. It's not coming out as strongly as it could be.
Any sympathy for, say, Tulip Sadiq, who's there on the left, who resigned yesterday, given that her constituency 75%?
I actually have sympathy for, well, I don't have sympathy for someone who says that Article 50 shouldn't go through. I do have sympathy for those people who say it should be this way or that way, and we should try to have amendments on it, even if they go on to lose. That's a respectable position. I think Corbyn's boxing himself in pretty badly on this issue. I understand why he took the position he did. Article 50, the will of the people's got to be respected. The size of this rebellion is significant enough. I think he may actually have to back down.
But very difficult when the party has seats in both Leave and Remain.
Well, I know, but that's why I think they're going to whip votes about amendments. We should have a roadmap for how it's going to work before it goes through, and they whip votes on having a statutory basis for some of the the committees that analyse Brexit and so forth. Those amendments you can whip. But on this, I think the rebellion is now so bad, he's probably just going to have to give them a free vote. Because even though that means he's backing down, continuing with the whip and then having 50, 60 Labour MPs openly vote against him, several of them back front benchers inviting him to sack them, which he won't, that's worse. So I think making the best of a bad lot, he's probably just going to have to U-turn.
OK, let's move on to another story inside the Mail about diesel cars. It says now diesel car drivers could be forced to pay 50% extra for parking.
The reason I chose this story is that you will well remember many drivers in this country were encouraged in years past to get diesel cars. We thought it was better. We thought that they were more fuel efficient. We thought that it was better for the environment. And government after government, of course, Gordon Brown famously made it better in 2001 for low-sulphur vehicles and rewarded diesel drivers. He would cut diesel duty. But now, authorities are being given the ability to, or it may be given the ability, to double parking prices for those who drive diesel. Nobody is going to change their car as a result of that. They may think about it on the margins when they buy the next one.
I guess,
yeah.
But it's for years. It's just going to be a tax on people that did what the government wanted and bought the car that they were asked to.
Although I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but there is, I guess what they're trying to do is, because this is not for residents, this is something that will be applied to visitors. And I guess the thinking is, well, don't drive to central London. But that does raise a wider question because of air pollution, and it is a problem, and it's affecting children. And, you know, we are one of the worst.
But we have lots of buses and lorries that drive diesel. That's why this ban makes no sense.
Well, that's what I was going to say, right? That it would make much more sense to focus on public transport and actually, you know, that would be a better focus so that people really have no need.
I agree, because it's classic government, right? They bully the part of the country that can't change the thing they've got in the same way that government can. There's a part of the transport infrastructure that government directly controls because it runs them, or at least it has the franchises and can dictate to the people that hold the franchises. Instead, they hit the private individual.
OK, let's move on, because we want to talk about the Queen, who's being greeted there by a Fijian. And where is this happening?
Norwich. This is a great story. The Queen meets the Fijian head of government, who says, "You know, Your Majesty, we've got a demonstration of Fiji art and exhibits in the University of East Anglia." And, of course, Her Majesty says, "That sounds very nice, I'll go." But then she does. You know, 90 years old, in January, turns up to go and see the UEA's Fiji exhibition. I think it's great. And
she looks in fine form, doesn't she? Having not been so well over Christmas, she's looking in good spirits.
She looks in good spirits, and so does he.
So does the Fijian warrior.
It must have been quite chilly.
Yeah,
say that.
Barefoot.
In Norwich today. We've got a little bit of time just to talk about that last story that you picked out, which is about Parliament's facelift, as they call it. This is the £3.9 billion restoration project that's being proposed to try and get the House of Commons shipshape.
The Parliament we have, and that we all love, I mean, it's a great iconic building, is in risk of falling down. I mean, it is not properly flood ready, and think about where it is. It is not properly fireproofed, and its immediate predecessor burnt down, and it is not, in all manner of health and safety and modern environmental standards, not fit for purpose.
OK, and this is suggesting that Lying in State would have to move. It'd have quite big implications.
Huge implications. Lying in State and St Paul's, but there we are. I think it's got to be done.
Agree, in a word?
Has to be done.
Has to be done.
Yeah.
Has to be done. OK. Rachel Shovey, Alex Dean, good to see you both.
Thank you very much
indeed.
Thank you.